Hello, my name is Daniel. Welcome to my channel. So recently, Michael K. Vaughan put out a video where he went over the next 15 science fiction books he was going to read. He did this with a couple other genres as well. He had a list for horror and for fantasy. And since no one reads horror, it seems, on booktube, people like David Wiley, Randy Ray, and Steve Donahue put out their own lists of 15 science fiction books they were going to read. Because I am young and impressionable, I decided I would also put out the next 15 books I was going to read. And as it happens, I have here 15 hardback copies of the annual World's Best SF. I've been collecting these recently, and I have 15 hardback copies, so I'm just going to show them to you real quick. These were edited by Donald Wollheim. I just recently found out on Michael's channel that he edited a series like this prior to the year 1972. I don't have those, so maybe I have to rectify that, but right now, that's the cover for the 1972. 1974, I'm already missing a year. Here's the 1975. Is that a Winnebago or something? I don't know. A Space Winnie. 1977. I think this is the first one I picked up. 1978. 1981. 1982. They kind of have a glare here because they're covered in plastic, which is nice. That's the 83. I do love these covers. We're getting closer to the magical year. This is 84. And here's the one from when I was born, 1985. That's me. I really like the cover of the 1986, though. I do wish that was my year. It is not. 1987. I feel like this one could trigger some phobias. 1988. The hair. This one doesn't have plastic, so I can just put it straight on. 1989. And finally, in 1990. And as a bonus, I also have the 1979, which for some reason didn't get a hardback, which is sad, but what are you going to do? At least I have the stories, and that's the important thing. And that's it. That's the next 15 science fiction books I'm going to read. I hope you have a great one, and I'll talk to you... No, that'd be boring. So I'm going to count that as one entry, because what kind of video would this be? So that's the first thing. I just want to read those anthologies soon. I think that is where science fiction really shines, is in the short story. But here's another group for my number 2 entry. If you're counting at home, I will lose count very shortly. Don't worry. But for my number 2, it's another group of books. They're very wafer thin, as they say. So I count them all as one. That's the James Blish Star Trek adaptations. These were put out while the series was in its infancy. So a lot of things that you find in these books are a little off-model. I'm missing a couple entries, but I do have them on my Kindle. They're a little off-model. They don't really have a series Bible at this point. So you get weird things like he describes the Klingons, and I think either 2 or 3 here. He describes the Klingons as being of Oriental stock, and well, that's not accurate, and we'll just leave that alone. But anyways, these are still kind of fun. Sometimes it can be a little disappointing when you have an episode that is really good, and then you read this adaptation based on the script, and you're like, well, that was okay, but like all the magic wasn't in this. It's because it was, this was put out based on the scripts alone, and I don't think he had, at least early on, he hadn't seen an episode, so he was just going blind. But they do have neat covers. I like the painting on this one, even if it is horribly inaccurate. And then we get a couple boring ones where it's just, stock photos. I don't have 4, but I do have 5. I've only read the first 3 so far, so they take like no time at all to read. Yep. And I would love to get like a painting or something of these, or a print or something. Even if things look a little funky. This one someone decided to color, but I've seen this volume held up a few times, and I think it was Michael K. Vaughan himself who said the Enterprise looked weird here. I like it. I don't know why. A little less red. Okay, it's a little funky looking, but it's better than the refit that you get in the movies. Oh, also, as a bonus, this isn't by James Blish, but it's by J.A. Lawrence, who was really probably helping him a little bit earlier than in this book. This is Mud's Angels. As I'm recording this, it is September 8th, and that is Star Trek Day. I decided to celebrate by reading this today, so I'm dropping my other plans, and I'm going to make sure I get this read before anything else today as a celebration. But this also has like an original story. It's not just the Harry Mudd adaptations. He has 2 episodes in the original series. It also has an original story in it, which I have not read yet, so looking forward to it. And this is my favorite cover of all, because Harry Mudd's awesome. Next, we have a series that I'm working my way through. This is the 3rd entry in the series, and anyone has already read it, and that is Children of Dune. This is the sequel to Dune Messiah, which is the sequel to Dune. I read Dune and I loved it a couple years ago. Last year I read Dune Messiah and thought it was good. It didn't reach the heights that Dune did for me, but I realize that a lot of people consider this to be a companion to Dune Messiah. So really, maybe I'm only getting part of the story in Dune Messiah. So I want to continue with Children of Dune this year. That is something I'm really looking forward to. So Children of Dune, and I have almost all of them in this paperback range, which I love. And I got them for free. They were just being donated at a library, and I'm like, oh, okay. So Children of Dune. Here's a series I don't know a lot about other than it's about terraforming Mars, but it's really popular. This is Red Mars. Later you have the sequels Green Mars and then Blue Mars. This takes place over, I believe, centuries, because it takes time to terraform a planet. This is the first entry. It's a little chunky, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be really good. Here is another 3 for 1. This is another anthology series, and this is SF, the year's greatest science fiction and fantasy. This is a little bit older than the volumes I showed you earlier. These are stories from 1956 and 7-ish. I have 3 volumes here, and they feel like they're going to start disintegrating in my hands. So I believe this is actually the first one, and then you have this one. I think I stacked it inappropriately, but I got 3 years of the best SF from the 50s. Here's something from an author who has opinions and will share them with you. And that's Poul Anderson, and this is The Star Fox. I'm just going to look at the synopsis on the back. The aliens were as powerful as they were beautiful, and Earth had faltered before them. Now the time-deep, here's a proper noun, Aleorina, I said that wrong, but anyways, were tightening their silvery grip on the universe, and all that stood between humankind and extinction was a band of gorillas on a firestorm planet, and a legend called Star Fox. So, I hope this is good. I've read some of Poul Anderson's stuff. Some hits, some definitely misses. He's interesting, though, and he's very prolific. So, another classic is Ringworld. This has to do with, I think it started as like a thought experiment. Let me sort of give you a synopsis of what the Ringworld is. I don't think I could explain it just off the cuff. I myself had dreamed up an intermediate step between Dyson spheres and planets. Build a ring 93 million miles in radius, one Earth orbit, which would make it 600 million miles long. If we take the mass of Jupiter to work with, and we make it 1 million miles wide, we get a thickness of about 1,000 meters. The ring world thus would be much sturdier than a Dyson sphere. I'll take your word for it, Larry. But this is, I guess, a story that takes place on such a construction, which is like vast. It's way bigger than Earth. I mean, it's the entire orbit of Earth in that ring where people are living. So anyway, it might be interesting. Next thing I have for you is Frederick Pohl's Gateway. This kind of seems like it might be like a horror science fiction, which I think is a great combination. The back says, "Rich man, dead man. Those were the choices Gateway offered. The same for women too, of course. Gateway opened on all the wealth of the universe, and on on reaches of unimaginable horror. The humans who rode the alien Hichi spacecraft stored on the planetoid couldn't know whether the trip would make them millionaires or corpses." So, Gateway. And the art is awesome. This doesn't make sense as a construction, but I don't care. It's science fiction, baby. Here's something I'm going to need to delicately put my finger over. This would be Andre Norton's Exiles of the Stars. This also reads like a sort of sci-fi horror. And this is going to have a lot of proper nouns that make no sense. Yeah, so please bear with me. As crew members of the free trader ship Lytus, Mylan, in the furred body of Vors and Krip Vorlund, you know, sometimes people got carried away with science fiction names, who now walked as a Thassa, had put down on the planet Thoth to find themselves in the midst of an explosive civil war. The Thothian priests wanted them to transport the valuable Forerunner treasure to Ptah for safekeeping. The free traders agreed, but shortly after liftoff, disaster struck, and their ship was forced down on the uninhabited, terror-filled planet of Sekhmet. I like the idea of a terror-filled planet, and so I want to give this a shot. Also, something about the cover was a little compelling. Don't know what it was. I think it's the green. I like green. Alright, I'm back. This is kind of science fiction. This is part of the Mars series of Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is Swords of Mars. Actually, this is a bit of a proxy. I have to read The Swordsman of Mars first, which is the number 7 in the series. This is just, I didn't feel like fishing out my Kindle. That's how I have it. I don't have all of these awesome paperbacks yet. Got most, but we still have a little go. But this is the Barsoom series. If you haven't read A Princess of Mars and the other Edgar Rice Burroughs books, give them a shot. They are so much fun. I'm nearly done with the series, and every book has been well worth reading. So it's a classic for a reason. And we have the pastiche of the Mars books. This is the Green Star series by Lynn Carter. I got these mostly in a set. I think there might be a couple I'm still missing. But here, let me read to you the synopsis and see how Barsoomian it sounds. On Earth, life held for him only fate of a recluse, confined to daydreams and the lore of ancient wonders, but apparently destined never to share them, until the day he found the formula that enabled him to cross interstellar space. So already we're getting a little bit John Cartery. It was then that the world that revolved around the unnamed green star drew him, and as the usurper of the body of the tree city of Phelan's fabled hero, he was able to experience in the flesh and blood all that his heroic fantasies had yearned for. For there was a princess to be saved, an invader to be thwarted, and other world monsters to be faced. Under the green star is a Lynn Carter salute to the great tradition of the Grandmasters of Interplanetary Swordplay. Read Burroughs. So I got these all in the nice yellow spine. They're awesome. Well, I mean, the appearance is awesome, but I don't know about the books yet. So, that is Lynn Carter. And since it is Sumerian September, we can't have Lynn Carter without Elsbreg de Camp. This is Elsbreg de Camp's, the best of Elsbreg de Camp. It is labeled A Science Fiction Book Club Selection, Classic Science Fiction Introduction by Poul Anderson. So, while the cover is screaming fantasy a little bit, this is science fiction. So we'll treat it as such. And if you didn't get the relation before, Lynn Carter and L. Sprague de Camp put out and edited all the Conan stories that were written by Robert E. Howard, and then they wrote their own pastiche into the Conan series, causing a little bit of controversy here on BookTube. But they are writers in their own right, and science fiction, I believe, is where they really excel. So I'll enjoy those. Next is something that I wanted to read for Garbogust, and it didn't happen. Ran out of time. Sorry, it happens. Life comes at you fast. So, Tech War by William Shatner. This is probably not going to be the great masterpiece of science fiction that he may have hoped. I mean, I don't even think it was really written by William Shatner, but he had input at some point. His name is on the book, so we will treat it as such. This is just, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it's an ex-cop who's dealing with an addictive brain stimulant called tech, and he's been in suspended animation and is now released to go seek justice. I really don't know enough about it yet, but I will, and I'll report back to you. Next, I have, well, this is a couple books, but this is the second one in a series. It is Being Alien by Rebecca Orr. You can ignore Ben Bova, that's just part of the Ben Bova Presents line. Rebecca Orr, I don't know how much she wrote beyond this trilogy, but it started with Becoming Alien, which is a book I got at like a discount store when I was in junior high. Mainly I was intrigued by the cover, and then sadly I was disappointed to find out that the cover has nothing to do at all with the story, but the sequels do. So Being Alien was the next one, and then Human to Human. And this is about a boy who is living with his brother who is a drug dealer, and they're just going about their business as usual when there's a crash landing, and they find a bat-like alien that has sort of crash landed and is in rough shape. So the main character takes him home to his brother to try to nurse him back to health, but his brother is, being a drug dealer, has like a warehouse factory kind of situation going in a bunker in the basement, and he decides to make the alien useful, and he's going to make the alien produce drugs for him. It's a really weird book. So the alien gets progressively worse and worse, and eventually does pass away early on in the book. But the main character tries his best to recover him. Unfortunately, the alien's family finally gets his location of the crash landing, come down, find out that their relative is dead, and so they take our human protagonist up into space as sort of like, well, you took responsibility for him, now you have to take his place in the Federation. There's this whole like Federation of Planets, kind of a la Star Trek, but a little bit different. A lot of the aliens in these books are animal based, which is something I'm not huge into. I don't like Earth animal equivalents of space aliens. We have bird people, we have bat people, but in the book's favor, they do act very alien. They're not like in Star Trek where they're just like humans with head ridges. These beings act significantly differently. The plot lines of these books is not something I would consider traditional. It's a very non-traditional story, and I'm very interested in seeing how it progresses into a full trilogy. So, Being Alien is the next one that I'm going to read from this series. I'm going to have to pause here because I forgot to pick up a book. I'm back. Hi. So, the last thing I plan on reading, and I believe that's 15, unless I forgot something, in which case I'll splice it in later. But the last thing I got is another anthology, and that is The Best New SF4. This is from well, these stories are 1989. I believe it was published in 1990. But, also, pardon the sticker, it is there to stay. But the Best New SF4, it's a big old anthology of the best stories from 1989. However, the same stories are not in the 1990 annual World's Best SF. So one of these books is lying, and we'll have to have like a clash between the two to see which one is correct. I believe there's only one story that's shared between these. There are a couple of shared authors, but for the most part, these are all completely different stories from the other anthology, reporting to be the best. So we have a little bit of clash at the end of this. When I read these, I do want to read these together to see which one will reign supreme. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed looking at these. I hope to enjoy reading them and sharing them with you if they're worth your while. But I also encourage you to go and check out the other videos of the 15 SF books that people are planning on reading. It's very interesting. There's a lot out there, and a lot of it doesn't get much attention on booktube. So check it out. Check out Michael K. Vaughan et al. and their channels, and see what they are planning on reading next.